Welcome to GTR East Africa 2020 Virtual. I'm Ted George, founder and chief narrative officer of Kleos Advisory Limited, and I'm delighted to be back chairing this conference this year. This year we are going digital for reasons that don't need explaining, and though it's not the same as meeting in person in Nairobi, GTR have developed a platform that gets the most out of the digital format. Everything is available on the landing page. You have the agenda and you can click to see different sessions. You have details of the attendees with whom you can connect digitally during the conference and speaker details as well. There is also a digital exhibition with virtual stalls for our sponsors, and you can connect with them and find out about them there. There is also a discussion forum, which we welcome you to join as well. The conference itself will have a mix of live and pre-recorded material on demand. Pre-event material includes the Trade Tech Demo Lab with a number of elevator pitches. These are worth viewing. We will be discussing them later in a panel during the conference. And then during the conference, we will have some pre-recorded presentations, such as this one, but also several live panels. And during these, we will welcome your questions. When you view a panel, there is a question and answer button on the right, and you can submit your questions. There will also be polls taken as well, and we very much welcome your input there. All the live sessions will be available shortly after they've been completed, and indeed all material from the conference will be available online during the conference and afterwards. So if you do miss a session, you can catch up at your leisure. Please make sure to fill in the event evaluation form. There's a button for that on the landing page, and also maybe take the GTR challenge, which is to really try and use the digital platform as much as possible. Whoever wins that challenge will get an Apple Watch, and that will be announced at the end of the conference. So what do we have in the conference for you? Well, on day one, we have during the morning several on-demand pieces, an interview, a case study, and a panel discussion. And then in the afternoon, we will have two live panel discussions about trade and trade finance, and finish with a panel discussing innovative technology. On day two, we will have a pre-recorded keynote about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement in the morning, as well as a corporate treasury showcase. And during this time, there will also be digital breakout sessions that you can join on impact investment, insurance, and asset distribution. We then finish off the conference in the afternoon with two panels, one on SME financing and a final panel wrapping it up, talking about the future of trade finance in East Africa. I hope you can join us and participate in as many of the sessions as possible. And now, to set the scene, I'd like to give a short presentation taking the pulse of East African trade, so to speak, and trade finance, and looking at some of the challenges and opportunities ahead for all of us. Many of these will be discussed later on during the conference. So how has East African trade fared during COVID-19? The reality is that everywhere in the world has been affected by COVID badly, and East Africa is no different from anywhere else. Nowadays, we all have to get used to transacting digitally a lot more than we did before, which means a lot more on the mobile phone. And we have to attempt to social distance at markets, which are usually crowded. You can see not everyone's wearing a mask in that photograph. Life has changed. People are constantly checked for their temperature. There are curfews, many of which are not popular, and we are having to adapt to this new normal. And this period of great difficulty and disruption has come at a difficult time for East Africa because trade flows were already faltering before COVID-19. If you look at the chart on the left there, that data shows that after quite a strong surge between 2010 to 2014, there was a slump in trade, and even though it was recovering up until 2018, last year it was down around 13%, $44 billion. That is trade for the EAC. This reflects generally weakening demand, and this was before COVID. But the reality is the impact of COVID when it came has been very mixed across East Africa, as you can see by the chart on the right. Kenya and Tanzania have fared relatively well. Kenyan trade down only around 2% and Tanzania's around 6%. But the landlocked countries are the ones that really suffered, particularly Uganda, Rwanda, who've seen their exports fall by more than a third. Now, part of the reason that Kenya appears to have done better during this period is that we've seen a real drop in imports and re-exports. This reflects flattening demand across the region. And because of this, but set against this, we've also seen that exports actually went up for Kenya during the first half of the year. it's possible that estimate by the EIU might actually see a rise in Kenyan trade overall for the year. But the reality is that there is a huge impact that it's had generally on local demand and interregional trade. Most of us working in East Africa are involved in interregional trade, and it really has impacted those flows across the different countries with a huge impact on business as well. Now, when it comes to the overall picture, though, of the trade partners, it remains very much the same. China and the EU remain the dominant partners. We can see here from this chart that China has grown its share of East African trade by over 140% during the last 10 years to around $9 billion last year. Trade with the EU in comparison has been broadly flat. This partly reflects the fact that many of the deals between the EU and its former territories in Africa are in certain sectors where there's just a steady flow of goods from year to year, very much dependent on preferential access. What is interesting to see from this chart is that intra-Africa trade still remains the single most important point of the EAC's trade, but it is losing ground to China. And this partly reflects the fact that a lot of the imports of electronics, capital, and consumer goods come from China. From what we've seen at the beginning of this year as well, with the drop in interregional flows, it's possible we might see China becoming the key trade partner for East Africa by the end of this year. But while all this has been happening in terms of trade flows, something else very significant has been happening in Africa. And that is that Africa has finally passed the digital tipping point. Now, the phrase tipping point is very overused. People are always saying we're at a tipping point, but it has actually happened this year. GSMA estimates that for the first time, by the end of this year, over half of Africans will not only have a smartphone, they will also have a 3G connection. And that is absolutely crucial when it comes to connecting them to digital services. We can see from the chart there, from the ITU statistics, that mobile phone subscriptions have grown from under 100 million 15 years ago to over 800 million now. And even though mobile broadband subscriptions, the red line there, are growing relatively slowly, we can see that 3G coverage, the green line, is now at exactly the same level as mobile phones. That means if you have a mobile phone, you have 3G. And this really changes the game. Not only do people have access to the internet via 3G, but handsets are getting much cheaper. If you take the picture there of Techno, for example, cheap handsets available for $15, even $20. You can even get a very good smartphone and you can buy it essentially for free and immediately start paying back 75 cents a day. That's Lipa Mdogo, one of the current services being offered in Kenya, and there are many others. And what this means now is that everyone in the value chain in East Africa is effectively connected digitally. This really opens up possibilities in terms of what you can do serving them, but also in terms of gathering information from them for everything that passes through the value chain. Now, this digital innovation we have seen not just when it comes to mobile phones, but across the board. There are nearly 500 tech hubs in Africa, and Kenya, in particularly Nairobi, remains one of the key tech hubs in Africa. We can see here from this great map by Brighter Bridges, a real selection of different fintechs out there, whether it's e-wallets and payment solutions, loans and savings, blockchain, and also tech hubs in themselves. We're seeing huge growth in innovation in East Africa. And this is really coming through in everything to do with the way business is done, but is also affecting actually how trade finance and how commodity finance is functioning in the region. And let's not forget, at the end of this all, we have one of the biggest potential changes coming to trade in Africa. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement kicks off in January next year. It had been due to kick off during July this year. Because of COVID, it has been delayed. There is a virtual heads of state meeting planned in November, and it is hoped they will confirm that in January we start with the AFCFTA. But even if it doesn't start in January, it is coming, and it will have a profound impact. There's so many big questions about what it will mean in practice. How do you put the AFCFTA together? And I think the actual logo that they have for this free trade area really shows what it's about. It's about putting the different pieces together. Very roughly, the yellow could be SADC, the green could be COMESA and EAC, the black could be ECOWAS and the CFA frame zone. There are already existing trade blocks, but the devil is in the detail, and there is so much detail. But at the same time, there is a huge opportunity here, and it really is going to change the way that trade can be done cross-border. They will need a huge amount of help from experts in technology, in payments, and in doing deals for trade in order to make this happen. And we will have many discussions over the next 2 days looking at the implications of the AFCFTA and all of the other issues that I've discussed in this presentation. So thank you for your attention. It only remains for me to say, I hope you're enjoying the conference. Please join as many sessions as you can online, and please do ask questions during the panels, because we would very much like to get as many of them answered as possible from our panelists. Enjoy the conference.